weekly Women Win Wisconsin segment powered by our friends at Motherhood for Good, Kate Duffy and Danielle Scampini-Lynn with us as often. Kate, Danielle, how are you guys?
Good. How are you doing?
Well, all right. Danielle, haven't talked to you for a while. Life
I
treating you well?
know it's been a bit. Yeah, things have been a little busy with the back to school season and it's suddenly being, winter apparently, but yeah,
Yes.
things have been good and we've just been hitting the trail and
Yeah, I was going to say there's this
yeah,
other thing, this election thing that's going
well,
on as well.
that other
And,
thing.
and for all of these weeks, you have helped us talk to all kinds of legislators, legislative candidates, people from independent groups. And today we're moving on to the U.S. Senate race. And for that, I thank you at Motherhood for Good very much for helping arrange our visit this morning with Senator Tammy Baldwin. Senator, good morning. How are you?
I'm great. We have 19 days to go, and I am having the pleasure of traveling all over the state of Wisconsin in the final days, trying to reach voters where they are. And it's been an exciting race, but it's a tight race, and we've all got to do our part to get out the vote.
It's funny. It is that is just Wisconsin's known for dairy, for the Packers, and for close elections, and it's
Yes.
why you're getting around the state. You've had that bus tour with Governor Evers and Governor Whitmer. You've had Vice President Harris, Governor Walz, all coming through the state. And what does that tell you about what you have to be telling voters in these final 19 days? Whether it's folks who need to be persuaded one way or the other, or maybe the better thing is persuaded to vote. What is it that you want them to know about the importance of this election date?
Well, we're the battleground state, and I mean the battleground state. We were the tipping point in 2016 to get enough electoral votes for Donald Trump when he won the state by 0.7%. And we were the tipping point state for Joe Biden in 2020 when he won the state by 0.6%. If anyone in this state says their vote doesn't matter, they could not be more wrong. These races are decided by a couple of votes per precinct in the state. And so I think that given the stakes of this election, whether it be our rights and freedoms, or just everyday issues like the high cost of things and the high cost of groceries and gas and housing and childcare, and the need for good paying jobs and quality health care. All of those things are on the line, and people's voice is their vote. Their vote is their voice, both ways around. And we need to exert our voices to help encourage our family members, neighbors, and friends to get out there.
Yeah, it's get out the vote season. It's talk to your neighbors, talk to your friends, talk to literally everybody you've ever met in your life that lives in Wisconsin. It's like that kind of season, push the pride away and reach out to everybody, right? I want to touch on something you just talked about, Senator Baldwin, the high cost of things. So a lot of our community is like women and moms who hold a lot of purchasing power, and economy is a really big thing for them. I know inflation is down and the economy and market is actually in a really good place, but a lot of people still aren't feeling that because things like groceries are so high. I know you've talked about the reason for that being corporate greed and corporate profits. Can you talk a little bit more about that, about why
Yeah.
people aren't seeing relief there?
Kate, that's such a good question. And one of the examples I like is very much a mom example. Think about the cost of diapers, right? Disposable diapers, I'm talking about.
Mhm.
So the big input is like pulp, paper pulp, right? It's a paper product. And by the way, we're like the lead paper producer and in the country here in Wisconsin. But during the time of the pandemic, all of our supply chains got totally screwed up. And so there were, the demand for diapers didn't drop, but the supply of diapers did. And so what happens then? Simple economics, the price goes up. But since then, our supply chains have reset. And the makers of diapers have seen their input costs go down by 75%. So did we see a price drop for diapers of 75%? No. We have seen over the like 3 inflationary years a 14% increase in prices. But corporations have seen 75% increases in profits. That's corporate price gouging in my mind. And right now we are pushing to pass legislation that would allow, a cop on the beat who's fighting for consumers. It would be the Federal Trade Commission. And just, I think, the simple threat of being able to investigate allegations of price gouging would probably result in a different sort of corporate behavior. But that's just one example among so many. There's been watchdog groups that have listened in on quarterly corporate earnings reports, and they've been saying, well, you know what? The consumers are tolerating our high prices. There's no reason to to drop them. And then we've talked about this before, but the shrinkflation thing, oh my gosh. Like Dawn dish detergent, it used to be a 7-ounce bottle. Now it's same size bottle, but it's only filled with 6.5 ounces. Whether it's fewer Doritos in the big family package, I mean, on and on and on. And say they charge the same price, but you're getting less of the product. You do it with paper towels and toilet rolls. You name it, we're getting gouged, and we have to figure out a way to fight back.
Yeah, you're talking to, two moms of young kids who are definitely seeing the groceries fly off the shelves a little bit faster. And is it because they're eating more? Maybe not. Maybe it's because everything's a little bit smaller. So yeah, thank you so much for addressing one of, our community's like true kitchen table issues, literally. Another thing that is, so important to our community is reproductive freedom and reproductive health care. And while there are a few clinics that have opened back up in Wisconsin, we still live in a state where abortion is extremely restricted. And we've seen like very real stories of, Kate and I heard a really powerful story of a woman just a few weeks ago when Governor Whitmer was here, talking about how she was, having kind of a later term miscarriage and could not receive the care because of these bans. And so, that is something that obviously matters so much to our community, so much to so many people in Wisconsin. And, your opponent is someone who is barely qualified to run for office, let alone make decisions about someone's healthcare. So just wondering, like, what you think we can do to make it clear as we're talking to people just how important this issue is at the ballot box, particularly in the Senate race this year.
Yeah, so this issue is all about who decides. And I hear politicians like my opponents say, oh, the state should decide, or the federal government should decide. Women should decide, full stop. That's what I believe. And that's why I'm leading on the Women's Health Protection Act, which is a bill that would make Roe v. Wade the law of the land throughout this nation, so that your rights and freedoms don't depend upon your zip code. And I just want to emphasize that in a state like Wisconsin. In Wisconsin, we have a criminal abortion ban that was passed in 1849. That has resulted in care being unavailable, illegal, and inaccessible in 69 out of 72 counties. That means your rights and freedoms don't just depend upon the state you live in, but the zip code you live in. And our rights and freedoms should not be zip code dependent ever. And I'm, it's frustrating because my opponent did run for office once before, back in 2012. And he said he was 100% opposed to abortion rights. We have him on tape and video saying that. Of course, now, oh, that's a lie. That's a lie. Just to be real, he's trying to change his position. So be it. Even with his changed position, he thinks states should decide rather than women. He celebrated the Roe v. Wade decision. He owns the chaos that exists across this country, where there are states that have no exceptions for rape and incest, where there are states that have 6-week bans, Idaho that has a criminal restriction on out-of-state travel to access the care that you need. There are doctors under the threat of prosecution, and now we know women are dying. This is not a tenable position on the part of my opponent, and we've got to make that clear to every voter who cares about this issue.
Senator Tammy Baldwin is our guest on our Women Win Wisconsin segment, powered by Motherhood for Good here on Up North News Radio. Senator, we know that the border, immigration, and fentanyl coming over the border have been issues that have been amplified, I would argue, disproportionate to some of the needs of the moms who are listening and their families, but these are still real issues nonetheless. And there seem to be mixed messages out there about your record when it comes to fentanyl and, stemming this terrible epidemic of use and of deaths. So I'd like you to clarify what your actions have been on the border, on fentanyl, and what it is that's getting in the way of getting things done.
Absolutely. So I'll start with the border. We know that we need to restore order there. And this past winter into the spring, in the Senate, we negotiated a very strong bipartisan bill that would have added 1,500 new Border Patrol agents to our southern border. It was endorsed by the very conservative Border Patrol Union. The additional thing it would do that was very relevant to your question about illicit fentanyl coming in from the southern border is that it would have deployed technology that would be capable of scanning every vehicle entering into our ports of entry. It's kind of like, I think of it like when I traveled and go through TSA at the airport. They have technology that can see into our baggage without opening it. We now have that sort of technology available for our ports of entry. And this bill would have deployed that technology to our ports of entry. It would have allowed us to interdict far more illegal fentanyl than we are able to today with hand inspections of most vehicles, not most vehicles, occasional vehicles, because that's the personnel that's available. And so why isn't this law? It isn't law because Republicans like my opponent, Eric Hufty, wanted an issue to run on. He wanted to play politics with this, and that was preferable to him than having solutions. Had we passed this spring, we would already have those 1,500 Border Patrol agents in place. We would have already been deploying this technology, saving hundreds of lives in the state of Wisconsin by limiting the supply of illicit fentanyl coming in. They wanted politics. And you can see the ads they've run as my proof point. We wanted solutions. It's a clear and simple contrast. But the second thing I want to talk about, and I'm so glad you asked it, was that, the issue of drug addiction, overdose is really, really personal to me. My mother struggled with addiction to prescription narcotics that her doctors gave her to deal with her chronic pain. And when I first came into the U.S. Senate, the leading cause of overdose and addiction were prescribed medication. Fentanyl was not on the scene yet. And we worked really hard to change prescribing practices across this nation in the VA and in the private healthcare settings. And we did. But people who were struggling with addiction turned to heroin. And then we picked up our fight to combat heroin. And then the scourge of fentanyl came around. I fought very hard for a bill called the Fend Off Fentanyl Act, which looks at the entire supply chain, from the precursor chemicals in China to the pill presses and distribution from the Mexican cartels. That is one of many measures that I have worked on and been successful on, and we have more yet to do to get Narcan deployed across our communities, to get our first responders trained on how to prevent exposures to themselves, but also to treat people with Narcan. It is a battle we must all engage in, but one that I've been very proud to lead in the United States Senate.
We are talking with Senator Tammy Baldwin. We will wrap up our conversation right after this. You're up north. Welcome back. We're wrapping up our conversation with Senator Tammy Baldwin on Women Win Wisconsin, powered by Motherhood for Good. Time for one more quick question. Kate Duffy, why don't you take that?
So, Senator Baldwin, one other thing I wanted to talk about that kind of parlays into what we were just talking about is just healthcare overall, which, should be a very big bipartisan issue. Everybody needs healthcare. If Republicans were to take control of the Senate, and if, God forbid, Donald Trump got elected, they're talking about getting rid of the Affordable Care Act. This is something that millions of Americans rely on for health insurance. And I know you've been really involved. You were actually the person responsible for the provision that allows young people to be on their parents' insurance till they're 26. Can you talk a little bit about why it's so important that we protect that, especially in terms of the U.S. Senate?
Absolutely. Prior to the Affordable Care Act, people with pre-existing health conditions, people struggling with cancer, diabetes, asthma, or just children who had illnesses that they've recovered from, couldn't get health insurance because the insurers were able to discriminate and cherry pick who they covered. The Affordable Care Act changed all of that. And I was so proud to be a part of writing that bill. I was one of those children with a pre-existing condition that had no health insurance throughout my youth. And so I get it fundamentally. My opponent said that he would be a vote to repeal it. It would strip healthcare away from millions of people with pre-existing conditions. That's about 1 in 3 Wisconsinites. And he called my provision that you just called out, allowing young people to stay on their parents' health insurance until age 26, he called it stupid. That is so condescending, frankly. It shows how out of touch he is. He owns a $3 billion California bank, but I don't think he gets us in Wisconsin. In fact, he was callously saying that people struggle with their weight should pay more in their health insurance premiums. I'm going to keep on fighting, not only to keep the Affordable Care Act, but we need to build on it. We need to do more to lower drug prices. I'm proud of the progress we've made, but we need to do a lot more. And that's what I'm going to fight to do.
Senator
As
Tammy
someone
Baldwin.
who took advantage of that when I was fresh out of college, it really helped me transition to my, adult years. I did not get a job right out of college that provided me health insurance. So I took advantage of that till I was 26, and it really did make a difference. So thank you for actually making a difference in, real people's lives.
Oh,
Sorry.
it's been making a difference in
Yeah.
so many lives. Just ask J.D. Vance's mother.
Yes.
But that's a story that we covered earlier, and I'm sure we'll mention again. Senator Baldwin, thank you for being so generous with your time. And again, the debate tomorrow evening with Eric Hovde, you can hear that on Civic Media, coverage starting at 6:50. Senator, thank you so much. Safe travels. We'll talk again soon.
Thank you.
And we'll be back with more after this. You're up north.